calling to order the Parks and Recreation Commission meeting of November 9th, 2016. It is 6:30. We'll have a roll call to begin. Teresa Lister.
Teresa Jimenez here.
Bonnie Bologoff here.
Karen Lenz here.
Kevin Fryer here.
Renee Marmion.
Lau Covino, present.
Thank you all. Do I have a motion to adopt the agenda?
I make a motion that we adopt the agenda.
I second.
Okay. Any changes or additions? We're fine? Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. All right. Do I have a motion to approve the minutes of October 12th?
You did that.
I make a motion to approve the minutes of October 12th.
I'll second it.
All right. Any changes? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay. Do we have any citizen communications today? We don't have any citizens in the audience. Anything, any emails or anything that anyone wants to bring?
Were the
Commission?
were the emails that came in regarding the Day in the Park event going to be discussed?
I think we will discuss them under subcommittee. I think
Okay.
that'd be good.
All right.
'Cause they were addressed then, I think.
I did get one citizens communication. I was going to do it under commissioners, but I could do it now if you like.
Whatever you prefer.
I'll just do it now.
Okay.
It was an email I got from a citizen, and they wanted to talk about proposed after-school programs, summer parks and recreation programs, and I replied back and referred them to the rec program subcommittee.
Mm-hmm.
And when they meet, have them to be invited to share their thoughts.
That sounds good. They're interested in after-school.
Yeah, after-school programs, summer parks,
Yes.
and rec programs.
Summer Parks and Rec. Okay.
Yes, at BES.
Okay, good. Very good. I'll make a little note there for the Programs Committee.
And I'll let the staff know who the citizen is.
Okay.
Thank you.
Communication. Terrific. All right, so why don't we move right into old business? It's the annual commission report to City Council, select date and representative. We have an attachment. So it looks like we are choosing someone from our commission to make a report to the council about an annual report, letting them know our priorities and interests and work plan, results of the work plan.
Right.
Okay,
So the
Val?
goal this evening is to pick a date for one of the city council meetings, either January 5th or February 2nd.
Okay.
And then to designate the commission representative or representatives to go on behalf of the entire commission to report to city council and to create a list of highlights and achievements from the past year that you'd like to share with them.
Okay. Sounds good. So January 5th or,
Can I ask a question through the chair? In the past, we used to have the liaison, the two city council peoples come to the commission and sit down and kind of talk to us. Are we not going to be doing that anymore? Because then they kind of
We can.
reported back to.
Yeah, we can
City
absolutely
council.
do it that way if that's the preferred method.
I don't know, I just wondered if,
That's what we did before.
yeah, if things have changed, if city council asked us to.
Not that I'm
report
aware
to-
of, no.
Okay.
So it's entirely your decision how to go about the process.
I don't know, it was just a
what do
question.
you all think?
I like the idea of doing it the way it's been done in the past, just because it feels all-inclusive of all of
Yes.
us.
Instead of picking one person.
Yeah.
Well, I actually wonder if it's not two separate things. And first of all, who are our city council liaison?
It's Madison and Lori.
Madison and Laurie. And when I remember this happening in the past, it was an exchange and a conversation when they came to us, and I think that's a very valuable thing. It gives us a chance to have a conversation with them. But I think it also is valuable if a member of this commission goes before the city council in a city council meeting, and I mean, it's good for the citizens, it's good for the community to have that sort of report, which is a little bit more maybe one-sided. We make a report. Of course, that could also be a conversation as well. Are they two separate things, and would it be valuable for us to have both?
Again, I leave this to your discretion. This was a conversation that we had as part of our goal setting and work plan preparation meeting. We talked about giving council a report of what was going on with the commission, some achievements, kind of looking towards the future on what you hope to accomplish as a commission. So however you guys want to go about the process is entirely up to you. We as staff don't really have any specific direction for you.
Okay.
So, Madam Chair, in following up with Kevin's discussion, I would agree that both are avenues we should explore doing. Based on the dates, it would make sense that January 2nd, the liaisons were here, we have discussion, all-inclusive of all of us, and then have representatives talk on the February 5th meeting to City Council.
I think, I agree. I think that there is benefit to doing both. It's always good to have a conversation. I don't know what kind of, I'm sure we have some things that we'd like to discuss with council members and liaisons. But I think it also gives us more of a presence in the city if we go to council and we give a report. Just allows the citizens to see, a little more visibility at that meeting, allows them to see what we're doing as a commission, which I think would be nice.
Good point.
So, okay, so.
Do you think you should go as the chairman?
Well, I could, or if there's somebody who would like to volunteer and go, I'd be open to that too, so.
I think it would be a good tradition if that role was done by the chair.
Okay.
And that would be a different person each year unless you serve 2 years as a chair, but that seems like the appropriate thing for going to speak to the city council.
That's what I thought.
I'm happy to do it. Okay. So should we look at that then for the February date? What was the actual date?
What's the January date?
So we could look
January
to invite the city council liaisons
Okay.
to our Park and Rec Commission meeting in January.
Okay.
And then the February 2nd city council meeting, we can look to add your presentation to the agenda for that evening.
Are there, just to have a quick conversation about it right now, are there some topics we'd like to discuss with our liaisons? Something that is more of a discussion with council members at this point? Nothing comes to me off the top of my head, but I'm just thinking it'd be good to have some.
If I may, through the chair.
substance.
With the liaisons, I think kind of giving them the format of our goal setting so they could see it, hands-on visually too, and
Okay.
discuss that stuff that we have on there and what we plan on doing for the year, kind of
Okay.
like what the outline says. But actually let them see the,
Talk about the process a little
Yes.
bit more? Okay. Of our work plan?
yeah.
Okay. Sounds good. And is there anything that you guys can think of, Tricia or Noreen, topics we might want to discuss with council?
I think also giving the entire council an idea of the commission's work plan for the future would be helpful, so they know that what you guys are working on, and they can kind of give you credit for what you're working on. But I think highlighting some achievements from the past year too. I mean, just establishing a work plan in itself is an achievement, and so I think to highlight that would be great. And you made some significant budget recommendations this year, improvements to Mission Blue that were very valuable to the city and the community. The 30th annual day in the park. So highlighting those kinds of things, the public art guidelines and facility naming policy, all of those are great little.
We have done a lot, haven't we?
Yeah.
Excellent. Okay, good. That sounds good. I'm wondering if we should perhaps submit to you some ideas for topics of conversation when the liaisons are here for the next meeting, just so that we have just some kind of a rough outline.
Yeah, we can bring it back to our December meeting as well as the work plan and kind of go through and check off where we've made progress and action items that we've completed.
great.
So we can put that on our agenda for our next meeting
That
in
sounds good.
preparation for the January.
That sounds like a good idea.
Okay.
Let's make a note about that. So December meeting, we'll go over work plan. Yeah, that would be great. And accomplishments. Okay.
When is the December meeting? It's usually on this.
December 2nd.
December 14th?
14th is what I have.
Oh, I see, it's on the second page. Okay.
Okay, that sounds like a good plan. Excellent, thank you. All right, let's see. How about moving on to new business? A Master Trails meeting recap.
I'm looking at you, Lyle.
No, you are, Noreen. I saw that. So it was a very good meeting. Members of the community, as well as members of the sub-team, I guess, in regards to the master trail. We went through the two plans, one for bikes and one for pedestrians, laid out the maps. We put some input into what our top three things were, either pedestrian or bike, our top areas we wanted to make sure that we went after and trying to incorporate in the master plan. Those same charts for the pedestrians and bikes were presented at the Thursday after the meeting's farmers market to get public input as well. There were colored dots for people to come along and put, hey, what's your top priorities, and color coding them with little dots to say, hey, this is what I like to see, a trail here, or a bike pedestrian here, or this is what I want to do, to give some feedback, to come up with a final solution that we should be getting presented to. These are the things that we're going to go through and do. Areas that we focused on were safety. You know, if there were areas where we thought we'd quiet the street down by putting some either extra bike markings or signs or lighting for pedestrians, or kind of slowing the traffic with speed bumps or other ways to slow traffic in high areas. That was also things talked about. So everyone put their inputs in on the committee that was there to represent their ideas of how they wanted to see the master plan carried out. So.
And Lyle, is there a representative from the school district there as well because I know that there's safe routes to school, and it seems like there's some crossover.
There is, and I'm not sure if there was a representative there that night, but that was talked about. There, it was brought up about safe schools. One of the persons working at the consulting firm is very knowledgeable about that and was helping with some ideas. So that was brought up about the safe schools, and so they were incorporated. Yes.
Great.
So we should see something in the final draft of the master plan. Yes.
Good. Exciting.
So overall, very good. And again, I went to the farmers market that week to see how things were, and there was getting a lot of responses back. And besides giving stickers out to kids to enjoy, lots of stickers were on the maps and things. So it was good to see.
Excellent, excellent. When did you say the next phase of this is happening?
I can defer to Noreen.
I don't think they've scheduled that yet. I think they're hoping the team is working on some additional cost estimates, and then I think they're hoping to do a presentation to City Council on the draft plan within the next coming months. But we haven't scheduled our next meeting. So.
Okay, good. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Interesting. Okay, let's move on to the memorial plaque policy, which is an attachment. Noreen, do you want to give us a little
Sure.
background on this?
So hopefully you guys have had an opportunity to kind of flip through the agenda report. This came about from a relative of former residents who wanted to donate money for a memorial bench out at the marina. And in talking to the city attorney, he said, this is probably not the first time that has come up, and it won't be the last time, and we should have a policy in place for fielding these requests to make sure that we handle them consistently and fairly. So we thought that it would be a good time, kind of following on the heels of the facility naming policy, to come up with a draft to City Council for how we want to handle memorial benches and plaques. And some of the commissioners can probably speak to the history in the city a little bit more than I am aware. I know that there's a few existing plaques in the park. I know that there's one up at the pool. So whatever knowledge you have that you want to share with the commission would probably be very valuable. But what we're looking to do going forward is kind of to talk about the important points that we want to consider in our policy so that we can begin to draft one.
Okay, let's see.
Bless you. And I provided in the staff report a few examples of other cities who have implemented
helpful.
similar policies, so we can kind of pick and choose from their policies and implement what we think might be helpful.
Okay, great. Has everyone had a chance to take a look at the 3? Yeah, just to get started, and I like to hear everyone else's feedback. I liked the Berkeley one. I thought it had a lot of, it just seemed like as far as what is presented and what is needed for our city, I thought that it seemed to work well. I liked the low-income residents allowance with the existing benches. Thought that was nice to have that in as an option. With the Kingston one, I liked that they include the fees right in the document, and they also address the replacement in 8.2, the replacement of existing benches, because I think that is important to add. That's something that wasn't in Berkeley, and also relocation in case we have some sort of change and we decide to use a space for something else and need to move a bench. And the other one that I thought was good from Kingston was restrictions that to not permit mementos around the bench, because I could also see that happening.
Yeah.
Something I would never have thought of, but I thought that was interesting. So I would be interested in seeing kind of a combination of Berkeley with some of the additions from Kingston. Anyone else?
If I may, is this only for benches? What happens if somebody wants to have a memorial rock?
Personally, I'd rather not have individual policies for
Okay.
various things. If we could find a way to roll them into one policy, I think
Okay.
that would be helpful.
That's what I was just thinking, because I know that that has been brought up in the past.
Yeah.
You know, rocks,
Plaques, right?
plaques, benches, statues. Yeah.
Maybe we could include memorial, we could include plaques as well in the wording. Anyone else? Anything you particularly liked about one or thought would be useful?
Well, maybe I'll make some comments which really dovetail with yours, Karen. I looked through the 3 of them. It seemed to me that it seemed obvious, but Berkeley was the only one that had, hang on a second, I got to get to Berkeley, that had, criteria for memorial bench, an honoree must have been deceased for at least 1 year. Where the others were reading, it didn't seem to be that was necessary, and maybe that's something we don't necessarily want to make as a requirement, but I thought that stuck out. They were also, 2 of them had a 10-year timeline, one had only a 5-year timeline, and all 3 of them handle the cost issue differently. Some of them are very specific. Here's how much it costs. So we make that policy. Well, meanwhile, inflation happens, and now a bench costs more than is notated. On the other hand, having some sort of indication in the policy of what things should cost, so that a person who is interested in doing this can have a look and say, oh, that's going to cost me $1,200, or oh, that's going to cost me $750. I don't quite know how you balance those two things out, but and I think that's the only thing I had about it.
That's an interesting point about the honoree having to be deceased for at least 1 year.
Yeah.
I wonder,
Well,
what is
it begs the question: do we want to restrict it to people who are only deceased? If we have a distinguished member of our community and somebody wants to honor them, I think that's a decision we have to make. And they're still alive.
And exactly, it's not always someone that's deceased.
Sometimes there's something to be said for honoring somebody while they're still around to appreciate them being honored, or there's do we want to stick with sort of the standard policy, which is somebody has to be deceased before they're honored?
And I'm interested because it mainly talks about benches, but what about, say, the library? That's not a bench, but if you wanted to honor someone with the library, I could understand that. As for instance, there could be some type of I'm thinking in terms of the library, but something like that, not always a bench.
Or you mean something in the library?
Or, yeah,
Or the
Yeah.
library itself?
Yeah.
Or a room in the library?
uh-huh,
And some of that's covered by the naming policy, I think, but memorial specifically,
is
Sure.
bench.
yeah, yeah. I guess we'd have to decide whether it's honorary or memorial. And, because I think that is an interesting question.
Yeah.
My gut feeling here, without thinking about it any more deeply, is that I think maybe we should keep it memorial, because then you don't have kind of a competition among, living people and
Right.
how many benches do
Right,
do you have a bench? Do you have a
exactly.
bench? And, that might be a little awkward.
Well, it does say here, in one of them, it says, the person has to be deceased for a year before you'd have a bench, so that kind of makes it sound like it's more memorial.
Yeah, it definitely does. Yeah. Well, I guess my question is, do we feel comfortable just leaving it memorial? Do we want it honorary as well, or how do you guys feel?
I think appropriate to be memorial.
Yeah, I
versus-
think so too.
Yeah.
It feels like that to me.
And I think, we have other places in town where we have honorary, the bricks at the skate park and
That's
the
true.
stars at the park, and there may be other opportunities through facilities like the library, for people to purchase, various things to acknowledge
true.
certain individuals, so just wanted to throw that out there.
That's a good point.
In regards of the exhibits and the three policies, the Kingston one to me is, from my perspective and what I do for a daily work, is very detailed. It has more things in it that I like to see. It has a little more things in the Berkeley. So I would, in my eyes, model our policy more along the Kingston one with the level of detail that's there, with some things that may be from Berkeley that we saw or Sausalito that are good. But it's a good model because it goes through all the what-if scenarios. It's very detailed in schedule, time period. In the case something has to be moved, it talks about what will happen to the plaque in the event of moving or after the contract. So it very much reads as, yes, I'm renting this bench for a period of time with my contract with the city for X period of time, and at such time then I can receive the plaque back if you wish to. So
That's true.
yeah, to me again, if it's memorializing someone in a family, a potential grandparent, the grandchild, maybe when they're older, receive a plaque of for them as some kind of keepsake, something like that, because it is theirs. It's their renting space for everyone to see. So
That sounds good. Do the other commissioners feel comfortable with using Kingston as a base, and then maybe identifying some elements of the Berkeley or the Sausalito ones to
I
add?
like Kingston.
You like Kingston as well? Okay. So why don't we take a quick look at Berkeley and Sausalito and see if there's anything that you would like to add to the Kingston one.
Well, I think the one thing that you brought up that Berkeley has that Kingston doesn't is the low income.
Existing
if
benches and
if we wanted to have that option in there.
that's on page 2 of the Berkeley one. How do people feel about that? The low income Berkeley residents using existing benches available. So the donor only needs to purchase a plaque. So it allows people of different income levels to.
So that'd be like the benches that are, like, say, in the community park, and somebody wanted to put a plaque on one of those benches. That's what you're
I think so.
talking about?
An existing bench.
Or possibly at the marina.
But, well, yes, but otherwise, they would purchase their own bench and bring it. And if they purchase their own bench, and like say, it went on Crocker Trail, then that would stay there permanent. That's the one problem I have, is you have a 10-year term. I mean, it'd be like, we have a bench in the back of the community park, and it's been there for a while, and it'd be like all of a sudden, okay, your term's up, you have to leave. I think that's kind of insulting, you know?
Well, I think it also addresses the longevity of the bench. It says in one of these
Yeah.
that the common longevity of an outdoor bench is 10 years. So it's kind of like when the bench needs to be replaced is about the time the plaque is going to expire, and then it's given back to the family, which I think kind of makes sense.
Yeah, but what happens if, do they take their whole bench too? Like that?
I think
But the specific one I'm talking
bench
about that's
becomes the
in,
property of the city
Yeah.
at that point, and the plaque is returned to the family. That would be my thinking.
So
But
in,
that's to say that our bench
Yeah.
does break down in 10 years.
Yeah.
I mean,
I don't know,
so
I
in
just-
the Berkeley one, it says under term, the donation term for a bench and/or plaque is 10 years or the useful life of the bench, whichever comes
Okay.
first.
well, that I like the wording in that one, so that it doesn't have a definite expiration. It's just basically based on the life of the bench. And that should the bench break down before then, we could move the plaque to another location to live out its 10-year period if it becomes damaged or breaks down.
I don't think the benches in the park have ever been replaced, have they? They've been painted, I know.
But
I
see
don't
what
know,
you're
but I could
saying,
find out.
Renee.
Yeah,
It's
I
a
mean,
little
I'd be-
strange
I'd be
situation where
insulted.
you have, if you have purchased a memorial bench and then it goes in some sort of location, then what happens after that term expires? Does it stay there with the plaque? Do we take the plaque off? You know, you're not going to dig up the bench, but maybe that should be more clearly defined.
Yeah.
I mean, according to this,
Through the
They would
chair,
just
in
remove it.
Kingston, they do in this terms of office,
Okay.
you can purchase an additional 10-year term at the time of the initial purchase. The fee for this extended would be $500. So you can, for more
20.
money, you could make it 20 years.
okay.
I like that idea.
Okay, another question. The one that's in the park right now has no policy term. So if we put this
Is that
into
the problem?
effect, do we go to them and go, okay, you've already been in the park 10 years now, you gotta leave? Or you gotta have your other, now we're gonna charge you, or?
I would think that pre-existing this
Okay.
Right,
whole
so
thing, they're
in,
kind
again,
of
in the
grandfathered
Kingston
in.
one, it does talk about grandfathering in for 40 years.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay,
So, you're okay.
yeah. That's, you're gonna open a whole can of worms.
Right, but again, this is why the Kingston one for me kind of covered some of the scenarios you're discussing, that thought through. That's why I like the policy. Again, something to work off of that we can draft that fits our town of Brisbane, but it's a good starting point because some of the things, your concerns you have are addressed there, I saw. So that's why I liked it.
Yeah.
Now, the Kingston one on the
Yeah.
first bullet point under 5, it says it can also be a remembrance of a loved one, but also a celebration of birth or anniversary to honor others' personal. So that one opens it up more widely to different types of honoring various things. So do we want to keep that in there, or do we want to include, maybe insert the wording from the Berkeley one where it's talking about the honoree must have been deceased for at least 1 year, or we just say that the intention of this is as a memorial to a loved one.
I
don't know
tend
about the
to
1 year
like it
thing.
only as memorial.
Yeah,
I do too.
So maybe we can
yeah, just cross out the,
cross out the rest. Let's see, remembrance of a loved one, and just cross out the rest.
mm-hmm.
Okay. Does it matter if that person has been deceased for 1 year? That seems a little kind of strange to me. Is that important to anyone, do you think?
I don't think so.
I don't think so either. I don't think you have to wait.
Deceased is deceased.
Right.
If it's 6 months, you know, it's been
Right.
6 months. Do I have to wait another 6 months?
Yeah, no.
I mean, that
I
seems
agree.
kind of silly to me.
Me too. Okay. And then we're fine with the Kingston term. Was there anything else from Berkeley that you guys liked? I think that's it. Or how about Sausalito?
Through the chair, I did have one question. Is there a situation where the city of Brisbane would want to commemorate someone in this manner? I mean, all of these things are really set up for if a member of the community wants to memorialize someone. This is the process that they go through, and there's a price tag attached to that. Is there a situation where the city would want to do that on their own? In which case, and does that need to be written in here? How does that fit into the equation? Are we writing something that excludes the city from saying we really want to honor this founding father or whatever through a bench?
I mean, there's no rule book at this point. You guys are creating the rule book for the policy, so if you wanted to put an exclusion in there for, city designated memorial benches, you could do so.
Well, it seems to me, and this is just my initial thought on this, that this would be guidelines for the public. That the city could still, on their own, choose to memorialize someone through a plaque or a bench, but this is if someone from the community wants to do it. But do you think that we need to include something from, if the city were to?
Wouldn't they just follow the same guidelines? No matter if they're city or citizen?
Be subject to the same 10-year restriction.
Yeah.
You put some line that, I mean, the city would still have to buy the bench, so there would be an expense to them, but to the extent that whatever the fee is in total, and they have different fee structures, the three different things have different fee structures, certainly the city would not have to pay administrative costs or something like that, right?
Oh, yeah, I wouldn't think so.
Do we need to put a line in, or do we just not worry about it?
Well,
Strictly for the public.
yeah. Well, again, I think in the policy we draft, the purpose statement comes through again, back to the Kingston one. They do have a section for purpose. We can explicitly write the scope of what the policy entails. It's either in scope all public, excluding the city, right? So for all private individuals wanting to use it, memorialize someone, use the policy. If it's a public entity wanting to do it, maybe not. I don't know. I mean, again, something that we can think about and discuss in the purpose and scope of the policy. My thoughts on it are that we have a naming policy, as we talked about, that we have in place for naming of sites and things like that. This is really specifically, I know that Noreen doesn't want to have too many policies, but this is very specific to benches, and I think we could say, in our case, either a star or rock, something that we think that people want to put names on. Those 3 items, maybe, this is what the policy is for that very specific. Because if we try to make one policy to encompass everything, we're going to fail. Based on having written policies before for different things, we should focus it on the area that we're trying to intend to. So, some of my thoughts.
And then I noticed is it the Sausalito one, actually has a form attached to the back
I
for
saw
them
that,
to
yeah.
begin the process. Now, what would you, Noreen, from your perspective, would you prefer to keep those separate? Would you prefer to have policy in one packet and then have the application in another, maybe with fee schedule? Do you want them combined? And what for you is least cumbersome from a
I think if I think about it in dealing with the customer, it's probably easier to have an all-inclusive packet that we could give them that would have the application in there as well.
Now, if we had to change the cost at some point, then we would just have to review it and bring it back and
Yes.
okay it, and
Yes.
which I can't imagine we're going to.
It says that in one of these, something about the fee.
Yeah.
To give you a reference point too, I've done a little bit of research on memorial benches, and it seems like the pricing is about $700 to $1,000 for the bench, including the plaque. Of course, that doesn't include the staff time for installation of the bench, which would most likely be done by Public Works, but at least that gives you kind of a range of anticipated expense, and we can talk further when we bring back a draft policy about the exact dollar amount.
Would we include the Public Works time in with the final cost to the donor?
I think so.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay. Yeah, I'd be curious to know what that is all together. Okay, anything else? So do you have enough feedback from us to kind of get an idea as to?
Yeah, I think what I'll do is I'll use the Kingston policy as a framework and then incorporate some of the other ideas and suggestions from this evening. And then at our next meeting, I can bring back a draft and we can tweak and fine tune and change any of the verbiage.
That sounds great. Thank you. Just make a note. Very good. Okay. Let's move on to donations and fundraising for concerts in the park. Now, this was brought forward from the last meeting when we were talking about donations from individuals and businesses to concerts in the park, and whether or not we, correct me if I'm wrong, can roll over year to year. If we don't use all the funds, can we make sure that those funds always go to the artists?
Right.
Did you want to?
Yeah, I'll speak to this just to review, and you're right, we brought this forward from the last meeting where this was just a subcommittee report, and my understanding is in order for us to have a broader discussion about this had to be agendized, so that's why it's here. And just to review what specifically that is about, we had a subcommittee meeting where we had members of the community come in, stakeholders who are particularly interested in concerts in the park and who were themselves donors. And the perception and the reality is out there that if they write a check for concerts in the park and there's a surplus in that year, that whatever's left over goes back into the general fund, and we start over again from square one in the following year, which they had a great resistance to. Now, looking at the numbers from the last 6 years, what we find is that there are 2 years where indeed this happened, where there was a surplus. The other 4 years show a deficit. So the contrary argument is that year over year, if you average it all together, we are never coming out as a surplus. We are always coming out with a deficit. So what's the fuss about? Across 6 years, including the 2 years where we did have a surplus, if you average it out, we are about $1,000 behind a year. However, in spite of that, I think it still is a policy worth considering changing, because the fundraising potential is greatly diminished because we have this policy in place. And I think that we could be more effective in fundraising if we change this policy, if we make it the policy that the tagline would be every dollar you write in this check goes towards artist fees for this event. That's a very strong argument for it. The other thing about the years that we had a surplus, the years that we did have a surplus, we also were raising a considerable amount more money. In those 2 years, we raised $11,400 and $12,800 versus last year when we only raised $8,200, and the costs have remained about the same. So we've seen a decrease in the amounts of money that we've raised over the years. And then the last little bit of it is we got strong indication from some of the people at that meeting that they would maybe not continue to write checks if we don't change this policy. Now, one of them, we got some of the fundraising numbers. One of the people at that table, who is a community leader, he wrote, he donated $1,200 last year. So if he withdrew that over this little policy thing, that would be a 12% decrease. So that's the whole picture, and let's talk about it.
Yes.
Others, Teresa, Bonnie, you're on that subcommittee.
Yes.
Did you want to add to this? Because you've been part of these conversations, and I think you agree that with the idea that changing it's probably the right way to go, but maybe you wanted to add your
I
2
think
cents worth.
I think you did a great presentation there in regard to all the facts and the contributing factors to my biggest concern is that we've been losing donations. It's been decreasing the last 3 years. I mean, it was 3 or 4 years ago that we had one of the high, and really that's kind of been the amount of time that there's been a lot of talk about the money not going towards the bands and not being rolled over, and people have been not as free to give. So I think it's just really important that if we want to raise more money, that we do need to change this policy. I think it's really important, and I think we'll raise a lot more money, and I think that we'll be able to up the caliber of the bands.
Well, I think too, when you send out the donation letters, that should be explained, that it wouldn't go to the general fund. Because that's the 3 people that were there said, I don't give money anymore because it goes to general fund.
Mm-hmm.
And they really object to that. Because if you donate money for a cause, you want it to be for that cause, and if there's something left, save it for the next year, instead of going in the general fund.
Absolutely. I agree. I'd like to see that happen. Roll it over.
I concur.
Agreed. I think if anything, it's worth making the adjustment to the policy and seeing how it works. If indeed, again, the hypothesis is that donations have decreased because people are apprehensive about giving money because it's not going to what they intend to give the money for. We change the policy, we look at it in 2 or 3 years. If it hasn't made a difference, then maybe revisit the policy. But I think it's worth in investigating. Does it increase the amount of contributions based on the fact that a person donates their money for the concerts in the park, that it's going to concerts in the park only, and for the artists, and if there's leftover, next year it's using to make concerts in the park even better than the year before. So,
From a staff perspective, because I know there has been resistance to this in the past. Is this a difficult thing to do, to encumber these fees? What's the feedback from
So I'm happy to have additional conversations with Stuart about this. My previous conversations with him was that there wasn't a system in place for the rollover of funds for concerts specifically, and that wasn't something it wasn't a practice in the finance department that they currently use. And so his recommendation would be that if the commission decides that they want to set aside the donations exclusively for the bands themselves, not including staff time or promotional materials, anything like that, that the donation fundraising piece would have to happen much further in advance in order to book bands based on the amount of donations than in the current structure of the planning and preparation for summer concert series. So if that's really what's driving the band funding, then we have to be really mindful about how we're going about fundraising. And ultimately, if we don't bring in as many sponsorships and donations as we hope, that may sacrifice the quality of the bands. So.
Yeah, that's a very good point, actually, and it is a tricky thing, and I don't want to talk too much about Live at Mission Blue, but that is my base of experience, and I have that same complication in that the fundraising cycle happens almost after you've chosen, figured out what your artist fees are, and so there's a little nail-biting thing. What has happened in that case, and what I would like to see happen with concerts in the park, is that indeed you do raise a little bit more every year than you actually spend, such that in year 3, 4, or 5, you come into the year with a bit of surplus. And that's when you can really feel comfortable making a stretch, even before you've raised the money for it. I would also say, about this, if we change this policy, and there's a very good question, if we change this policy, what happens if we don't raise enough money to cover the bands? Then how do we carry a deficit in the next year, And I think that's a really serious consideration. Fundraising is not a fun thing, and fundraising is, I like to say fundraising is a contact sport. There's a certain art to it. In our last meeting, and we're getting ahead here, we'll have a report on that when we get down to that part of the meeting. We did have a sort of a robust conversation about fundraising and identifying where more funds could come from, and perhaps as a subcommittee, help with things like drafting a more compelling fundraising letter that talks about the importance to the community and so on and so forth, and to try to sort of meet that target. But you are sort of out there on a high wire for a while, and I don't really know. I mean, we're already indicating that we should book a band or two, I think, and the fundraising cycle for this doesn't start till February, March. So it is a little bit complicated. We are sort of, if we change this policy and we make this commitment, we are kind of out there on a high wire with nothing in between us. But conversely, if we don't change this, we will lose more funding, and then the counter argument for us as a subcommittee is to say, well, if it doesn't matter if we run a deficit, let's hire great bands and not worry about it, because there is no incentive to kind of try to make try to increase those fundraising goals so that we can increase the quality of the band year over year over year. So that's my thoughts on that.
And through the chair, what I would like to say is the goal of wanting to increase our fundraising is to up the caliber of the bands that we're hiring to play, because that's the other feedback we're getting from members is, we get a lot of feedback when they like a band, when they don't, especially when they don't like a band, then there's a lot of feedback. And really, it's really hard for us to say, oh yeah, we're going to bring in all these great bands and, put on these great shows for you, but if we don't have the funds to do it, it's not doable. So really, the goal is, we want people to donate, and we want them to feel comfortable donating, that their money is going towards raising that caliber of musicianship and the bands that we hire.
What I heard you say, Noreen, was something that brings up another point, and I think there are two related but different issues. One is, can we roll over the funds, the donations, from year to year? But then the other issue is, are the donations the sole source of funding the concerts? Because then there's a question, because you mentioned something about, well, what if we don't raise enough? And, in the past, then the city has helped make up the balance. But are we looking at having to make a choice, kind of contingent on how we use this fund?
I mean, as Kevin mentioned, the last couple of years we've been at a deficit, so there's a gap between what's brought in terms of donations and sponsorships versus what the concert series actually costs. And as I said, that doesn't include staff time and
That's true.
Promotional materials, the banners and T-shirts and things like that. So as it stands currently, we budget about $10,000 a year for concerts. So what we bring in donations comes in on the revenue side and offsets it. If we don't bring in enough, or then it comes out of the general fund. Mm-hmm. So if we wanted to ask council in the next budget cycle for additional money, if we anticipate bringing in additional donations, we could do that. But currently, as it stands, we budget $10,000, and if we don't meet our sponsorship goal, the additional expense comes out of the general fund.
Above the 10,000, or 10,000 is the cushion?
If it's more, we pay for it.
Okay.
But we try as much as possible to limit the expenses, which is, slightly dictates the caliber of the bands too, because we know kind of what cushion we have to work with.
Based on the time frame of booking the bands, is it possible for us to start that fundraising cycle much earlier? It almost would have to happen immediately after the concert series ends, but maybe that's not unreasonable. I mean, that's a good time to ask people.
Mm-hmm. Yes, when they're still
when they're excited and maybe
Right.
when they're providing their feedback and they're.
Well, I would just say then you're pinching my fundraising cycle. Live at Mission Blue, because I'm right in the middle of it right now. And that would be a difficult thing. Did you have?
No, they answered the question because I wanted to know what the budget was from the city because I couldn't recall. But I've also thought, which I've seen at a lot of other concerts in the park down the peninsula, the night of the concert, they always pass the tip bucket.
I'm going to cover that during the subcommittee meeting
Yeah.
Okay.
report.
But have you booked any bands yet?
We gave the okay to book 2 bands last night,
Because-
and we're going to be reviewing others.
Yeah, that's what happens, like right out, that's what I see at the other concerts, cities, they're already booked for next year. And they kind of do it. They see how the crowd takes that band that night, and they're back there and go, okay, we're going to book you. And then, of course, the paperwork and the monetary stuff happens later, but you get them down on the calendar.
I would just say a good observation about this whole thing is that this commission thing is working. The community is coming to us as commissioners, and it is saying, here's what we want. Here's the direction we want to go. And so now we as commissioners on the subcommittee are bringing that to commission as a whole, discussing the issues. If the decision comes back, well, no, then that puts us in a little tight spot because I will have a difficult time explaining that, because the goal of changing this policy is to increase year over year significantly the amount of money that we can raise so that we can increase the quality of bands year over year in response to what key stakeholders in the community for whom this is important are telling us. So that's kind of the situation we're in, acknowledging that it's a bit of a tightrope walk if we do this and say, okay, next year we're going to spend $12,000 and we're going to hope to raise 12,000, and then we only raise 11. then I don't know what we do with that. But if we raise 13 and we spend 12, and then the next year we say, okay, we can raise 14, let's spend 14, and then we raise 15, and we start to build this cushion. That's the part that allows us to reach step by step, year over year, to create a better quality event. And it's a 4 or 5 year sort of thing that you have to build it. And I speak about this in a direct parallel to Live at Mission Blue, and I have about a surplus of about a third of my budget in surplus, so that when I make my decisions, I can reach. And if I have a bad year, then, the next year So that's it. But on the accounting end of the equation, there has to be a mechanism so at the end of the year, if we reach our fundraising goal, we say we start the year with $245 in the bank, if that's all it is, that we can build on. And the last thing I would say is also, it's about fundraising and the integrity of fundraising and what you're asking money for. And this is the thing that even though in the aggregate we've always come up with a deficit, it's still really the community bristles about, and that's the idea that some of their money, when they write a check, might go back into the general fund. There's an integrity thing about that when you're asking for money.
So what would be your recommendation, Noreen, as far as how to put this in motion, or at least to talk to Stuart about the possibility of making this happen?
Sure. I'm happy to speak with Stuart about the feasibility of the financial piece and whether or not that's an option. Or alternatively, we could invite him to attend the next concerts meeting. I don't know if you guys have set one or if you plan to set one tonight.
We do have one set.
You do? Okay. So maybe having him attend the next meeting so that he could speak to it directly, that might be helpful as well.
That would be wonderful.
He's the
That'd be good.
finance guru, so
Okay, that would be good.
he could probably, answer your questions, maybe lend some solutions and go from there.
Okay.
All right, just making a note. Excellent, that sounds like a good plan. Okay, good, so.
Thanks, Kevin.
Yes, thank you, Kevin, for that. And let's move on to reports. Chairperson, I don't have anything today. Subcommittees, let's move right into subcommittees. Well, we'll just continue with concerts in the park.
Concerts in the park. Well, so as Kevin already detailed, we just met recently again, and we went over the fundraising. I won't repeat all the fundraising stuff. We've already done that. But to answer Renee's question, we also talked about the idea of passing the bucket. And I know that I remember last year when this whole issue came up, it met with a lot of resistance. And this year, it doesn't seem like there's any resistance from anybody, and everybody's in agreement that it's possibly a good idea for us to give this a try. We thought we would maybe look to a couple of community members, and a few names were thrown out to kind of, be asked to do the passing of the bucket during intermission time, where somebody can announce what it's for and somebody can go out with the bucket. And it was also thrown out there kind of wondering, is this something we want to do at every Concerts in the Park night, or should we just pick one or two? And didn't come up with an answer on that one, but that's another thing we're talking about. And if anyone has any feedback in that area, it would be helpful. We also picked two previous bands that we thought were definite rebooks, and so Steve was going to get on booking them right away, and then a lot of other names were thrown out, and we're going to do a little more research on those. We also discussed having a DJ night with a dance floor brought in, which when we had the meeting with the community members, and that was thrown out as something they really wanted, to have a DJ night with a dance floor. So one of the staff members is going to be checking on pricing for that, and that might also be an area that saves us a little money and enables us to put more money towards a live band. And then another idea that was brought up by community members and discussed again at our last meeting was having a locals only night, kind of fashioned in the same way it's done at the block party up on Sierra Point. And one of the city members, I believe it was Jerry Cool, had said, basically giving one musician, hiring them to kind of like organize the whole thing and get all the musicians and make sure everyone in the community who is a musician who might want to come down and sing a song or play an instrument has the opportunity to do so. So that was another thing that was brought up. And I think that's pretty much it. Anything else, Kevin?
I think that
I think
covers
we
it.
covered it pretty well.
The new ideas.
Yeah, I would just add about the passing the bucket, because that was a really good idea, and in the context of meeting your target, should we be put in the situation where we have to, meet the target? The passing the bucket would be a way to we kind of know how much we need. By that time, we'd know how much we raised, how much we've spent, what the difference is if we're in a deficit, and that would be one way to make up the deficit before the end of the year. Or take those funds and put them in, encumber them for the following season, so that we've actually kind of got a head start on the following season. So that is one, in the whole problem of raising enough money before you book, so you know how much you can spend, that problem. That is one way that you can kind of a stopgap measure where you kind of play catch up if you need to, or get a head start on the following season.
Yeah.
So that was also discussed by that. But we talked about the the kind of outgoing community member that we might ask to do that, because it does take a certain personality to.
I could think of a few.
Yeah.
I have a question. So we'll have to if we do the bucket, we'd have to be very clear about what that money is for.
Yes.
Because it would look like, to me, as a attendee and maybe as a band member, that
Right.
would be for the band currently playing, right?
That was
That's just kind of how it usually goes.
That was one of my concerns right away as well. And whereas you might see the bucket passed at a small venue where they're basically making the door and not, then yes, they're going to pass the bucket. But this is an event where they are paid, and they're paid well.
Mm-hmm.
And I think if the band knows that,
Have to be clear.
Yeah,
Have
it's
that as
not-
communication
yeah.
with the band.
correct. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. then
And it makes sense because they are paid well. They're not playing for, the door fee or just what, they're paid up front.
And then maybe on the bucket, you'd have to indicate this is for, to fund concerts in the park, rather than people feeling like they're giving.
Right.
And that's why I think doing it at an
announcement.
intermission
Yeah.
as well, where
And
whoever,
an announcement.
the announcement would say,
Yeah.
what it's for, give it a little lead up.
I'm really, I love the idea of the DJ and dance floor. I think that would be a huge hit in our town. And I like the locals night. Now, would those be on top of, in addition to the 6 or whatever, how many do we have last year? This year?
I
think we had
I
seven.
don't think that's the plan at this point.
Okay, it'd be one of.
It would be correct.
One of those, okay.
Yes. Yep.
If I may, through the chair, I want to respond to that, the bucket.
Okay.
Foster City and Redwood City, I've seen both of these, and they had several people walking around during the intermission. They had somebody come up at the microphone explaining exactly what it was for, and then at the next concert, they would say how much money they raised, and then would, okay, we're going to go back out with the buckets again, and this is going
That's a good
to
idea.
continue. And this was a couple years ago too, when things were getting kind of tight, and people weren't having as many concerts, and so especially Redwood City, they have big concerts, and they go for a longer time than ours. But yeah, it's all on the bucket, and people even had T-shirts, donate for the concerts and so forth.
That's a good
And it
idea.
worked.
Yeah, that's a good idea. And especially if there's a goal in mind and people can see how close you are to it, that might encourage more giving. Yeah. That's a good point. Yeah, I think that sounds great. And then there will be more subcommittee meetings kind of earlier in the process.
Oh, yeah.
We've been meeting once a month, so
Great.
yeah, I think we're actually really communicating well and
Right.
getting things going, making changes.
Good.
It's good.
Excited for next summer. It's wonderful. Anything else about concerts in the park? Thank you very much, Teresa. Let's move on to public art, and Bonnie, unless you would like to give the report, maybe Kevin would like to.
Kevin's so good at it.
Kevin is.
I'm happy to let somebody else.
You could do it, Kevin.
Oh,
We're,
You
we're
do it
happy
very
to have
well.
you do it, Kevin. That's great. It's kind of your baby too. So.
Okay, well, we just had a meeting today, and we have finished up our draft of the implementation guidelines, and that marks the end of 3 or 4 years of participation. First, to write the public arts ordinance itself, and then to work on the second half of the equation, which is the implementation guidelines. And I'd like to give a shout out to Stuart, who's been part of that process and really worked very hard with us, sometimes challenged our thinking when we needed to be challenged. It's a very, very good group. I would also like to thank my co-subcommittee members, Karen and Bonnie, and also Teresa, who spent
For a
some
while.
time working on that as well. It's been a really big project. The next thing for it, if we can, is to put it on the agenda for December, and so you would get that in your packet. We want everybody to read it. We wanted you to pick it apart. We want you if it doesn't flow right, we want to know about that so that we can start to refine it. Then from there, we would send it back to subcommittee probably in January, and we would invite some members of the community to do the same thing, to read it in advance and then come to the subcommittee meeting. This would be the newer version after you guys will have a look at it. And just to smooth it out, we've been with it so long that it all makes sense to us. But seeing something like that fresh, I think it might be confusing. So we want to make it so it reads smoothly. So that's the next steps with that. Then from there, we'd either bring it back one more time here for everybody to look at, and then it would be ready to send to the City Council sometime in February or March. We did, report on library public art RFP. We also met with what we're calling the ad hoc committee, which is our subcommittee, and then two members of the City Council, which is Lori Liu and Madison Davis, and city and the staff, because the library, the new library does trigger the public arts ordinance, and they want to put out an RFP. It's going to City Council. Do you remember when it's going to City Council? December.
It's
December 8th meeting,
yes.
For them to review the RFP. Request for proposal. The way the arts ordinance is written is that for city buildings, it's only 0.5% of construction costs. And that's a provision put in so that, you don't break the bank when the city's trying to build a building. So the amount that the public arts ordinance triggers for the new library is $30,000. But we talked about that in the ad hoc committee as not being really a lot of money for public art, and were there some ways that we could possibly increase that amount? The public arts ordinance has also been triggered two other times, once by the 5,000, 7,000 building out at Sierra Point, and then also by the new business, and I forget the name of it, that's at the VWR property. That being the most recent, and which Stuart indicated was about $30,000. And so what we decided is to take 20 from that and add that to this public art project. So the RFP will go out with a range, asking for proposals with a range from $30,000 to $50,000 for it. It's on a pretty tight schedule because we don't want the public art aspect of it to slow down the building in the new library, and at the same time we do want the public arts element to be integrated into the whole process. So it'll go by pretty fast. The other thing we did discuss also, and we discussed again in our subcommittee meeting, was the ongoing conversations we're having about restoring the mural that's on the side of Midtown Market. And Stuart has made some progress with that. He has contacted the owner of Midtown Market, and he's agreeable because it's on his property. Obviously, if he doesn't want anything to be done, it's not going to happen. He is agreeable, so Stuart's going to then work with the city attorney in terms of working up some kind of agreement. But there are still some other issues because the parking lot's not owned by either the city or by the owners of the Midtown Market. And so what keeps the owners of the parking lot from deciding to build a building there? So there's still a lot of moving parts to that idea, but it is moving forward, and I think we all on our subcommittee feel that would be a really popular and valuable public arts project to do with the beginnings of these funds that are coming through. Stuart thought that would cost about $15,000, but none of that's cast in stone. It's still that's still a work in progress.
Is the original artist?
Yes, the original artist has been contacted. A little backstory about her, and I forget her name. I don't have the tip of my tongue. But when she did that mural for us, she was sort of more at the beginning part of her career. She's become quite an important muralist. There's a very important mural by her in the Tenderloin, and there's a really wonderful documentary about it. It's about a half-hour documentary about that that you can find. I found it on YouTube. So her time is actually quite pressed. Her time is in demand. She's come back and said, yes, I will do the restoration, but I want the prep work to be done by somebody else. The prep work being that mural has varnish on top of it, so that varnish has to be removed. And it has to be removed very carefully in very small sections so that the solvents that you use to move that varnish don't cut down into the painting itself. So she wants that to be done. Obviously, she doesn't need to do that kind of stuff herself anymore because her career is taken off. And then she would come in and do the bits. Stuart commented in our meeting today, this is the first time he's tried to put one of these things together, and so he's kind of on a little learning curve himself. But that is moving forward, and I do hope that it's a project that we can also complete with this with funds from this new public arts ordinance.
Excellent. Thank you, Kevin. All right. Is there
you have
anything
anything
else?
to add to that?
No, you covered
no?
it good.
Okay.
Yeah,
All right.
that was every bit. Great, thank you again. Let's see, Teresa, I think you're going to do the debrief on Day in the Park?
I am. So prior to our meeting, we had received some communications by way of email from a couple of residents, or actually 2 vendors. One from CREBL, is that Krebel, or is it just okay? And San Bruno Mountain Watch, and there was a third also from one other person. I don't know if they're affiliated with either of those groups though, but there were 3. So I just want to say that we met in subcommittee, and we read the letters, and some of the things were things we noticed ourselves that maybe could be improved upon in coming years. It was the first time we tried something new like this, and of course we hope to get better and better every year and make changes where changes are needed. Areas for discussion, though, and I have quite a list here because there's a lot, but I am going to read through all of them for the benefit of the audience, for anyone who's watching and the rest of the commission. Okay. As far as the Derby went, we all felt it went really well. There was increased participation this year, and the building workshops ahead of time were quite successful, and so our recommendation is to go ahead and do that again next year with the workshops, and keep the Derby successful. The vendor booths, the commission suggests asking craft and commercial vendors to provide their own tent or pay an extra fee to have a tent rented on their behalf. We were hoping perhaps rather than using that one long tent down the center to maybe have more 10 by 10 booths along, so the walking path is down the center, kind of more like other street fairs you would see, and perhaps using the community tent like that, and maybe a smaller one. These are just ideas, but maybe using that for the community booths, and it could be at either end of the craft area, or even perhaps in a different location, like out on San Francisco Street. Just playing with different ideas there. We overall felt that having the vendors on the street was a nice change, but we did discuss ways to improve it. The feedback we got via email or saw on the residents page, or the feedback we heard during the day, was all very favorable. A lot of people really loved it. We got feedback that they felt it was the best event they'd ever been to as far as Day in the Park down there. So we would like to continue that, but it is going to take some tweaking. For instance, it was brought up in one of the letters that the chocolate vendor was facing the sun all day, and so that wasn't a good thing. But, you know, it's up to the vendor to let us know their needs ahead of time as well. Even when the booths were on the grass, I know BDW had because I was at that booth the prior year, had, you know, we had a booth that was facing in the exact same direction, whether it was on the street or on the grass. So it just, you know, we can't do all that thinking for everybody. You know, we could use a little help from the vendor themselves that these are their needs. So the beer and wine garden, in regard to that, it was very successful, great addition. Best PTO did a great job. We discussed potential alternatives next year to include other beer wine vendors spaced strategically throughout the event to encourage a better flow of people. It was a very successful thing. All the feedback was very favorable. As somebody putting on the event, I think that having a beer garden in one stationary place with seating kind of kept everybody there and away from where we really wanted people to end up, which was in front of the gazebo listening to the live music that we provided. So I think if we had something that moves, like bringing in different vendors where you can get like a flight or try different things, keeps people moving and flowing and not stuck in one spot. So, for instance, that's just an idea. A resident had also suggested using the shaded spot behind the restrooms as being a great spot for a beer garden. So, you know, we can look at that as well and bring it into discussion. Food. One of the food trucks and the Lions Club sold out, which was great. We'd like to welcome back the idea of food trucks for next year. We really think that event goers really liked having options. We'd also love to possibly have the addition of a dessert truck, ice cream, sweets, some kind of vendor like that as well, which we will look into. And since we will not be bringing back the zip line next year, it really opens up San Francisco Ave. So we will have the option of possibly changing the location of the food. And yeah, so, you know, we'll really be trying to brainstorm. And, you know, if anyone out there has any recommendations, sure, we'd love to hear them. The band, you know, it was really disappointing. The idea was to open the park up and hopefully have people come down and, you know, with the food that was provided and with the wine and beer garden, that people would set up and enjoy the park, spend the day in the park, which is, you know, what our event is called. And but that didn't happen. It was, I think the food and everything being so far away, the beer garden, people kind of seemed to be stuck more over in that area than coming over in front of the bandstand, the gazebo. And it was also a really warm day. So one thing we thought we could do was maybe encourage people, if we had, umbrellas out there, even if it was like rent an umbrella for a couple of dollars, or whether we provide them, but just something to encourage sitting out in the park if it's super hot. And then we also discussed the idea of maybe needing to move a beer garden, if that's what we do, or the food vendors closer to the gazebo, something to kind of bring it more into that area, maybe further down that side of the street instead of the side of the street that we did have it on. The revised layout, we discussed the year's layout extensively and feel with a few minor tweaks and adjustments, it could be improved for next year. Topics of discussion included providing shade umbrellas on the grass, which I just mentioned, creating an opening in the fence gate to allow event goers passage through to the vendor booths without having to walk all the way around. This was huge, and this was something, I saw as like, I think all of us kind of saw that was an issue, and that was something that was raised in the feedback we got back. So yes, important. We heard that. We agree. Yeah, and just relocating the public safety booths and the fire engine, possibly moving that to Old County. Didn't they express? They expressed interest in being moved down there next year. keeping the kids' attractions in the park, along with the ticket booths, etc. The teen area, again, for year 2, flopped. And it's the commission has decided that it's best to discontinue this until we have a solid YAC foundation. I think we need that part of the community. We need our teens to have a presence and really tell us what they want, and to be excited about it and spread the word that us trying to do it for them is not working. We really need them to lead us along and help us to make it something that is going to perform well. Certain attractions will not be brought back next year, like the zip line. Also, because we won't have the same budget next year. We had extra budget, being that it was our 30-year anniversary. But we did discuss exploring other vendor options to switch up games and inflatables as the budget may allow. We also discussed having rec staff do the face painting, which would save us a little bit of money on the expenses. The contests were a huge hit. Lots of fun, lots of feedback. Everybody loved the dog contest, and the pie eating was hysterical. Lots of great photos from that. So yeah, we want to bring those back for sure, and possibly, add in some family games like relay races, or just, that might be a great way to use the grass area as well, just to have more, extend that out onto the grass, and to do more things that are fun, that really engage the community. And the schedule of the day worked well. We shortened the day. We do need to make sure that the Derby announcements don't overlap into the contests again. That there was a little glitch with that. It all worked out, but we'll just schedule that a little tighter next year. And the other thing that we kind of still have open for discussion is whether we're going to do it earlier in the end of September again next year, or put it back into October. Still don't really have a really clear view. We really need to see what else is going on. We had some conflicts in the Bay Area and surrounding communities with their big events going on. And we kind of tried to schedule it around soccer schedules, which may or may not be important because soccer schedules seem to be going on all the time. So anyway, that's it.
And I did know that the weather in October was wonderful every weekend, so
Right.
Yeah.
such a reliable time.
Yes.
I love the idea of relay races.
Yeah,
Lawn, I think that would be
fun.
fun.
Yeah.
People would like that.
Yeah.
Well, thank you for the very detailed report. It was interesting to hear about discussing what worked, what didn't work, ideas for next time. It was good to hear all of that. I really appreciate it.
I just remembered there was one other thing I wanted to mention, and just on a personal note, one of the feedback letters we got really did not like the layout at all, being out on the street. Really felt that it needed to be back in the park. And, and that's fine. Everybody can have their own opinion. But the person said that they felt like it was set up like that to further the Parkside Plan agenda.
Oh.
And I would just like to address that, because I think I am one of the main people who really push to use the street. And the reason I wanted to do, and really, sure, it was inspired by the Parkside event that was held, but in no way was it a political move.
No.
I mean, it was simply me as a person who loves to throw events, looking at the use of this space and saying, yes, this is what I have always wanted, and it's kind of always been said, like, no, we can't use the street. And here we are using the street, so we see now that it can be done, so let's do it. It was specific to this event, nothing to do with Parkside agenda, and really to say that, there was some political motivation to doing it this way, I personally felt very offended. Because my only goal was to really try to make a great event and do it in a different way. And so if there are any people out there saying this was a whole Parkside agenda thing, if this is what we decide to do again next year, I would just like to say that it couldn't be further from the truth. That really, that's a rather ridiculous statement, in my humble opinion.
And if I'm through the chair, I would just like to say thank you and a big gratitude to the staff for all their hard work. You know, we planned this for a year because it was the 30th anniversary, and it took a lot of planning, and we tried to make it bigger. Unfortunately, through the several years, we've been getting low attendance at Day in the Park. So we really worked that whole year trying to make it better and bringing in the zip line, which people wanted for 3 years. Yes, it was a bust. Trying to do the teens. Yes, it was a bust. They weren't there. And there wasn't that much attendance this year, too. And to hear some of these complaints was very disturbing to some of us that worked on this for a year, when all we tried to do is make it better. It is not a fundraiser. This is my own personal talk now. It is not a fundraiser just for the local community vendors there. It is a day in the park. It first started out Piccadilly Circle for the kids. And that's what we have to remember. It's to bring the community together, the kids, the families. It's just not a fundraiser for the local groups. So next year, let's all go to the park, enjoy what we have, but remember the kids.
Right.
Well, I just wanted to add a thank you to the staff and also to people on the commission for this expanded day in the park. I thought it was really wonderful. Of course, there were problems. There were going to be problems. I think, Teresa, your accounting of that and you know what can change and what can grow and what we should try different. That's how you make things better. And I think that when we do make our report to the city council, I think this is one thing that we can all be very proud of, or that certainly those of you who worked so hard on it should be very proud of. So congratulations.
Thanks, Kevin.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Teresa. Let's move on to setting subcommittee meetings. So let us look at the list, see who needs to meet, now or later. So Day in the Park is finished for a little while. So you guys are right?
Oh, start planning now.
Or do you start right away? I don't know.
We can
Concerts
take
in
a
the
break.
Park does actually have a date set.
Yes, we
Okay.
do.
It's the 12th of December.
Okay.
Can you tell me what time? Because nobody gave me that.
Oh, I'm sorry, 12th of December, 6 o'clock.
Okay, so concerts in the park meeting. What else? Let me look. Events. Does events need to meet? Maybe not. Festival of Lights.
We are meeting on the 16th at 4:30 p.m., correct? Okay.
Okay. Habitat Restoration Day, no. Public Art, we will not meet until. Are we meeting?
No, we don't need to meet until after, until sometime in January.
Yeah, that's right.
Right.
Okay. Recreation programs. We had spoken about programs in relationship to
Right. Therefore, I think we probably should.
comments from a community member asking for interested in certain programs. So maybe that's Lyle, Teresa, and David.
Mhm.
I guess we'll have to check with David's schedule, and could you help us with that,
Yeah.
Tricia?
I didn't know if maybe Lyle and Teresa might want to come up with a couple dates, and then I can go back to him with those.
Oh, yeah, that's a good idea.
Might be easier to do it that way.
That's true, since we're here.
Either that or just see when he will be available with a couple of dates, and we'll wrap it around that, since that's kind of,
Okay, we'll work on that then.
okay.
Okay, so recreation programs. Okay, how about facilities? We don't need to meet, do we? No? I think we're fine right now.
Did they finish all the work at Mission Blue?
That I don't know.
The changing tables were installed, the refrigerator and the stove were installed. New chairs are there. I think the next thing, and we were waiting for the 55th anniversary party to happen.
Oh, that's right.
We're gonna replace the carpet.
Good.
I think that's next on the docket, and I think that's it for what we were budgeted for this year.
Then can we do a walkthrough?
Sure.
Okay.
Yeah. Let us replace the carpet first.
Yeah. So maybe next month. We'll see how it goes. Seniors?
Do you think we have to meet?
Well, we should meet. We should just touch base.
Okay.
We haven't, you know.
No. So when do you
We
want?
should touch base before we meet with the liaisons and add that to our,
Uh-huh,
you know.
That's true.
okay.
Don't forget,
Date?
Kevin's on there too.
Yes,
Okay.
I was looking at him too. I was winking at him.
I've got my calendar.
Because we are seniors now. We joined the group. We are official. Yes. We got to give Bonnie her dues.
That's right.
Do you have a date in mind for that?
We have 3 things in December already.
What do you got?
We have the 12th, the 16th, and the 14th.
You want to tag it on to
Is,
another one?
what's the 16th? Are you talking, isn't,
That's the,
that's
9:30.
November? The
is that
Festival of Lights?
November? I thought it was December.
No, it's November, right, Renee? It's November.
Yeah.
Yes, November 16th,
Okay.
4:30.
Yeah, it would be too late in December.
Yeah,
I just-
yeah. Well, do you want to do something right after the Festival of Lights? What's your schedule on the 16th, Kevin?
16th of November?
Correct.
We have a 4:30 meeting there.
Yeah, I was just thinking maybe we could do seniors after that. If Kevin,
Yes, at what time?
5:30?
5:30.
Because then staff is still here, it's a Wednesday. Correct? So seniors, 5:30?
Okay, good. How about teen services?
I think we should meet.
Yes, we should meet, and
Sorry.
I did get a notice trying to set up a meeting before this, and I was actually out of town, and so it kind of fell by the wayside, but I think we should try to have a meeting.
And then Ricardo went out of town, so that's why that didn't happen afterwards. So if you guys want to come up with something now,
Okay.
So what's good for you, Teresa?
How soon would you like to meet? And is Ricardo back and everything's okay?
on Monday.
Oh, okay. So let's see. I could do Tuesday I have a 7 o'clock meeting. I'm meeting Tuesday the 15th? No, okay.
I have to go to Las Vegas,
What a horrible thing to have to do.
just for the day, for work.
Wow, just for the day.
For work.
Okay.
That's how I make my money, gambling.
I can do the 17th,
What time?
5:30 or 6, either way.
Does that mess with us?
Now what?
The 17th, 5:30. At 5:30, what time will we meet?
Oh, yeah, he can't do anything the 17th.
5:30, 6:30, 5:30 to 6:30? Yeah, 5:30
Your meeting?
for a subcommittee meeting, and then I meet you afterwards.
Okay.
5:30?
Okay.
Okay. Yeah, so 5:30 on the 17th, and this is Teen Services.
All right, good. Trails development, I think we're fine on that, a master plan. So 280 South Hill sale proceeds. Are we going to?
Right,
discuss that
so,
next month?
so we were going to put that on the agenda
December.
for this meeting, but that got pushed back to next meeting. It's not an urgent thing, and we might have already a full agenda for December. I don't mind pushing that back until we have a spot for it, but I don't want it to get forgotten.
Yes, I actually talked to Stuart about this yesterday to
Oh,
get
good.
a little bit of clarity on where it was, and I know that he had a conversation with you about kind of waiting on the heels of the Trails Pedestrian Master Plan to see their direction and where funding was going to be allocated before we kind of took the next steps with the 280 South Hill sale proceeds. So I'm thinking maybe in the early months of next year that we could put it on our agenda, and I think we have a pretty full agenda for December anyways, so.
Okay, so
But we can anticipate, I won't forget about it, I
I'm
promise.
fine with that, I'm fine with that.
I think maybe February or March, and we'll see where the bike ped master plan
Okay.
stands.
It's on this subcommittee list, so we will always see it and remember.
Okay.
Okay, good. So let's see, where are we? Oops, sorry. All right. Any reports from commissioners? Nope. Okay. How about programs reports?
I just have a few updates for the commission. We have updated our JPA with the Brisbane Elementary School District. So we had a 2x2 meeting with the new superintendent as well as the school board and council representatives. So that was exciting. I don't think the joint use agreement has been looked at in quite some time. So staff made several recommendations to the document based on usage, actual usage, and council approved, well, the 2x2 committee approved the adjustments that were proposed. So we'll go ahead and update that document and continue to review it on every 5 years or so. It was great because we also began the conversation regarding the Lipman Field restrooms, as well as updating the BES preschool and after-school modular. So it's great to kind of plant the seed and have that conversation with the new superintendent so that we could move it forward. As I mentioned before, since we're not doing budget this year, we're focusing on CIPs, and that will come up in the next few months with the commission as well. But I know that the BES modular was on our CIP list, and so we will continue to have those conversations and hopefully get a little bit of traction, get it on the CIP list, and dedicate it to a fiscal year. So that was exciting. Just wanted to give the commission an update that City Council expressed their support for the proposed facility naming policy at the last City Council meeting. So we're going to look to move forward with the process in terms of next steps. And so the next step would be establishing a naming committee consisting of representatives of the Park and Rec Commission as well as the City Council. And so the commission can decide if they feel otherwise, but it probably makes the most sense for the Park and Rec Commission representatives to be the Recreation Facilities Subcommittee. So I wanted your take on that. If anyone thinks otherwise, then we can talk about it. Otherwise, we can connect with City Council representatives and kind of move the process forward, because from there, we'll set up a meeting between those individuals and determine how we plan to solicit names from the community and get suggestions and ideas and kind of initiate the formal process.
Sounds good.
Okay. Tricia provided everybody a copy of the CPRS, the California Park and Rec Society. They do an annual conference this year. It's being held in Sacramento, February 28th through March 3rd. So you should have the brochures there. We're most likely going to be sending 3 people from the department. So if any of the commissioners are interested in attending, please let us know, because we will fold you into our registration. I'm anticipating that we will make our conference registration probably within the next month or so. So if you could give me an indication whether or not you're interested in attending, that would be helpful. You can go for one day, you can go for all 3 days, so it's flexible. And the nice thing about it this year is that it's in Northern California, so it could be a drivable thing.
Does it include lodging as well?
We have it in the budget for commissioners to attend. I don't know whether or not it includes lodging for commissioners, but I could find out.
It did before.
Okay.
It
It would make sense that it does.
always did.
Yeah, okay. So let me know if you're interested. And then just a couple upcoming events. Tomorrow we have our Veterans Flag Raising event. It's going to be at the park at the gazebo at 8 a.m., just about 15 or 20 minutes with our veteran that we have here in town. And the Festival of Lights is coming up on December 4th. That's all I have.
I've got it on my calendar. Excellent, thank you very much. Wonderful. And let's see, just from a program's perspective, we've been attending the salsa class,
Oh, yes.
which is wonderful.
Yes.
And please, if anyone's watching, please attend the class with
Yes.
more students, and it's fantastic. The teacher is terrific.
I was also told it needs more men.
Yes. That's true.
So bring Good luck.
So, yes, that's been wonderful. Really enjoying that.
It's an hour-and-a-half class. It's fun, and it's great exercise.
Yes, Thursday, Mission Blue, 7:30 to 9, Thursdays. Drop in. So much fun. So let's
What's
see.
the cost?
It is $13 drop-in fee. Well worth it. All right. Anything else from programs? Is that it? Thank you so much. All right, commission matters, written communications, anything? No? Commission calendar. So for next month, we have some things on the agenda for next month. Yes, we have review work plan and accomplishments in preparation for the liaison meeting and report to council. Will we be looking at the bench policy in December? Okay. And we'll have the public art implementation guidelines to look at. And anything else? Subcommittee reports, anything else? Okay, that'll be a good meeting. Meaty meeting. So, great. All right, well, I think that's it. Anyone have anything else? All right, I will adjourn at 8:12. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.